tonight after the debate. So at 11 p.m. Eastern, there's going to be post-debate analysis on the Salem News Channel. So 11 Eastern, 2 hours of analysis, salemnewschannel.com. If you'd like to go to salemnewschannel.com, you can watch it there, featuring my friends Mike Gallagher, Hugh Hewitt, and others. We are today introducing a new voice to the program, a new guest. His name is Gavin Wax. He's a New York-based conservative activist, commentator, columnist, operative. He serves as the 76th president of the New York Young Republican Club. Gavin Wax, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me in this beautiful studio.
Ain't it the truth?
Piece of art.
Yes. No, it is actually. And the ceiling up above us is an actual Tiffany ceiling. This was a club built around the turn of the previous century. And we had as our guest George Gilder was sitting in this seat. And he looked up and he said that his great-grandfather was Louis Comfort Tiffany, who created, you can't make it up, right?
You can't make that up.
But
Gilded Age history.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so this is it's an historic building, and we're privileged to be recording here. Now, you are a New Yorker.
Yes.
I can tell from your accent. I've hidden my accent. I've taken many classes and a lot of coaching to get rid of my New York accent. But seriously, you're a New Yorker. You're the head of the New York Young Republican Club. We wanted to have you in to talk about what is happening tonight, which is to say, I believe there's some kind of GOP debate.
The vice presidential debate, yes.
That's not true. That's funny. Oh, I didn't get the joke. See, I love it when people put something over on me. Trump obviously is not participating tonight. And you know why? Because he's a political genius. Actually, it's very funny. It's very funny to me that he's not participating tonight. But so what is your general sense of what we're going to see tonight or not see?
I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of people at each other's throats. I think this has turned into a competition where everyone's vying for second place. I think there's going to be a stark contrast between what has begun to be, this never anti-Trump coalition, which is the vast majority of the candidates, and I think a coalition of one, Vivek, who has sort of found a lane where it's been complimentary of Trump while also trying to, show his own differences and his own, populist MAGA credentials. And I think you're certainly going to see DeSantis and him go back to back. There's been a lot of polls that show them neck and neck. And I think it's going to be interesting. And I think, whoever comes out of this is certainly going to solidify their position in second or third,
right.
Especially going into these early states. And
right.
It'll be entertaining for the vast majority of the people watching who are certainly already voting for Trump.
Okay, so you have been on the record just now, folks, you heard it, as saying, I think it's going to be interesting and entertaining. I have a different view. I think it will be not interesting and not entertaining. So I have an appointment with a hairstylist this evening at 8 p.m. No, it's kind of interesting to me to talk about this because we're living through unprecedented times. We have never, ever, ever had anything to compare to this. You're very young, but in my lifetime and in the lifetime of anyone who's alive today, we've never seen anything like this in American politics, where you have a president who I have no doubt that the election was stolen, so we're seeing a level of corruption in the Democratic Party and our political process. And he is so beloved by so many in this country that his poll numbers are through the roof. I mean, it's
rising.
There's nobody who is even near him. So to me, it's kind of comedic to think of how the others are jockeying. Like they're thinking, oh, he's going to be taken out, so I will be there when Trump is taken out, except Trump will not be taken out. But a lot of people think he will, but he won't. But that's kind of what's in their head. They're thinking, I want to...
That's their Hail Mary. They're trying to position themselves for some potential, out of left field legal move or move at the RNC convention or something that can knock him out of the field. But it's really desperate. It's desperate tactics. And like you said, this is a man who really doesn't know any equal in this field or in the American body politic presently. I was at Bedminster last night. He showed up. This is a man who's probably going to be turning himself in this week, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, to the Fulton County, court. And he showed up up, great spirited by the state for political crimes. He looks like a man who was extremely confident in his position. You know, he spoke to the people. He spoke, you know, got a lot of cheers and fawning, you know, a crowd for him. And I don't see anyone else in the Republican field or even on the Democrat side who would be able to, you know, do what he's doing now under the pressure, under the circumstances, under the full weight of the administrative state barreling down on him, and still, you know, be funny, be charming, you know, work a room like no other. I mean, that is a quality that cannot be replaced. It can't be replaced by consultants or focus groups or whatever donor money that you conjure up.
And DeSantis, we're talking to you. No, it's kind of funny because you look at people. Look, these are all, you know, I shouldn't say they're all. Some of the people debating tonight, I think, are loathsome toads, and I apologize for using toad as a pejorative because some toads are cute, but some of them are loathsome toads. But many of them are solid citizens. Governor DeSantis, particularly, you know, really wonderful gifts to America. I mean, to have a governor like DeSantis, but I just find it almost funny of, you know, how dull he is in comparison to Trump.
Right. Trump
has this outrageous gift to be entertaining and upbeat. I mean, you literally saw it last night. I've seen it recently. It's genuinely remarkable.
Right. And I say this line often, you know, going back in the day, you know, obviously before my time, you needed to have a voice for radio. Then you needed to have a face for television. Everyone knew about the, you know, the Nixon JFK debate. You don't want to be sweaty and, you know, stammering. And now you need to have the authenticity, the charisma, the presence for, frankly, for social media, which kind of cuts through a lot of the nonsense, and you get to see someone's psyche, their stream of consciousness and all that, which is why, you know, I've always said Trump's tweets, Trump's social media, Trump's, you know, persona in the public has never been a negative. It's been a positive. People like, obviously, his policies and what he did and his fantastic record as president, but they also love him being genuine. And that's how you explain his following, the strength of his following, and how it hasn't really moved or been shaken with all of these indictments and the entire, you know, system of government, the party apparatus all working against him.
Well, that's all true, and I guess I just want to go down because tonight, you know, I'm trying to think who's going to be debating. So we have Chris Christie. I think he's one of the toads I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure. I have to check in my notes. We have former Vice President Pence. We have Vivek. We have Ron DeSantis. Who else will be there tonight? I guess Larry Elder.
Haley.
Will Nikki Haley?
No, Larry Elder will not be there. He got removed last minute, and so did that other gentleman, Kerry Johnson.
I just heard that he would be there.
Oh, now he's back in. I can't keep up. They keep removing and adding him back.
No, I'm pretty sure Larry Elder should be there.
He should,
he's
yes.
pretty terrific. Okay, so Nikki Haley,
Tim Scott, Burgum, the governor. Where is he? Montana, North Dakota.
Burgum?
Yeah, I always forget.
Burgum? What? I just find it funny that there are people there I have literally not heard of that are going to be in this national debate.
Correct. Well, the candidates keep popping up. I mean, there was some pastor in Dallas that I saw recently. I was just down there. Now he's running. Blinkley, I believe. Ryan Blinkley. I don't know. There's just new candidates popping up every week.
But they get to be in the debate. How do they get to be in the debate?
They had a whole criteria. You know, number of donors, money raised, polling, I believe, and you know, most of these people were able to hit these goals, and then they changed the goals. I mean, listen, if I was Fox, I would be trying to get as many people onto that stage as possible. Certainly people like Larry Elder and others who know are going to have a presence.
Right.
But you're going down this list. I mean, I don't know what most of these people, what their strategy is going to be. I mean, Chris Christie, you know, I guess he's just going to be, you know, arguing with Trump without him being there. That's his only lane. I guess everyone else is going to try to vie for this very small cohort of Republican voters who are interested in someone other than Trump. So it's really going to be them stepping over themselves, trying to appear as this never Trump candidate to, you know, relieve the, you know, the wishes of a small minority of the party. I don't know.
And of course, it's a pity that it's going to be on Fox because I will never watch Fox again. I wish it were on MSNBC because I'd like to give them a chance. But it's interesting to me, again, you mentioned we have Vivek. Now, can you pronounce his last name?
I'll wing it. Vivek Ramaswamy. I think that's like
Gesundheit. Say it again.
Vivek Ramaswamy. And I think that's the standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vivek. Now, he's the youngest of the group, right?
Correct. Youngest. And frankly, I mean, look, I'm not the biggest Vivek fan. I definitely have some issues with him. I don't fully trust him. But I think it's really telling that a guy who no one knew a few years ago, who no one can pronounce his name,
Right.
with no political experience, can come
Right.
onto the field, and just by being a little genuine,
Right.
just touching some of the topics people want
Right.
to be talked about, he could storm ahead to the front of the field.
We're going to go to a break. We'll be right back. I'm talking to Gavin Wax. Don't go away. Folks, welcome back. I'm talking to Gavin Wax, who's the president of the New York Young Republicans Club. But before we continue our conversation tonight, after the debate, so at 11 p.m. Eastern, there's going to be post-debate analysis on the Salem News Channel. So 11 p.m. Eastern, 2 hours of analysis, salemnewschannel.com. If you'd like to go to salemnewschannel.com, you can watch it there. Featuring my friends Mike Gallagher, Hugh Hewitt, and others. Okay, so Gavin, you just said that it's so interesting that Vivek is able to have gotten this much attention. He's very young. What is he, like a tech genius, or how did he
one
make
of those
his
guys? Yeah, tech Silicon Valley entrepreneur.
Okay,
the whole thing.
But to me, the shock is that he's able to get any attention with 2 V's in his first name. That's never been done before in American political life.
It's true.
But so Vivek, or is it Vivek or Vivek?
It depends if you're, I guess, Eastern Orthodox or Roman Catholic. The pronunciations differ. It goes back thousands of years.
The Filioque clause is right at the center of the controversy. Okay, so but you're saying that Vivek and Ron DeSantis will be
Neck and
positioned
neck.
in the but they will be positioned at the center of the debate
Correct.
stage because they've gotten the best poll numbers, which still stink.
Correct.
Compared to Trump, but like one of them got like 4%, the other got like 3.5%, something like that.
They're
right?
battling in the mid-teens.
Okay, so not that bad, but
Close.
they're battling in the mid-teens, and then we have Pence and Christie flanking them. Is
Pence,
my guess.
I don't know how he's going to perform on a debate stage. I mean, Pence is used to sort of these kind of talking points, these little short blurbs, these sound bites. I mean, he's not going to be fluid or dynamic in a debate, where I think it is going to be a little bit of a back and forth. Christie, as much as I disagree with him and don't particularly like him, he is good with this type of thing. He is a sort of a bulldog. He'll come in there. He'll be strong. DeSantis, I don't think he ever performed particularly well during his gubernatorial debates, and I think on his feet vis-a-vis, versus someone like Vivek, it's going to be certainly interesting. But again, back to Vivek, all it shows is that if you break ranks with the donor class and you're willing just to say things that the people want to hear, that the Republican Party writ large wants to hear, you'll have tremendous success in this primary. And many of these candidates have been shying away from it, and they just regurgitate, the approved talking points. Vivek, to his credit, has been willing to go outside of the box a bit while towing this pro-Trump line. And I think because of it, he's found a really good, sizable niche in the party that others haven't captured.
A black mark in the book of Vivek is what he recently said about wanting to pull back support for Israel.
Right.
That's the opposite of Trump.
Right.
And I just find that interesting. Do you know why he would do that?
Well, he's had a few things, and I mentioned this earlier, that I don't fully trust him. I mean, I don't fully trust him on all his COVID, views and vaccine views, and I think,
what are they?
I mean, he has connections to Big Pharma.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ignorant enough to just have said, whoa, when I heard that, because I did not know that. That is very bad news.
Connections to Big Pharma. You can look at his old tweets and the things he's put out there. So he's all over the place. He kind of reminds me in many ways of like an RFK figure, where he'll be very good on an issue or two,
Yeah.
and everyone kind of like becomes
Yeah.
like amazed.
Yeah.
But then when you go down the list, it's like,
Do you think he'll be wearing a mask at tonight's debate?
I don't. I think he'll be okay on that front. I think if anyone's going to wear a mask, it'll probably be Mike Pence. But he's trying to keep the fly from getting in his mouth again.
But do you think Vivek will be boosted up for this? Like he's getting another booster just as he comes out of the wings?
If I was to make a bet, and I'm not necessarily a betting man, I think Vivek comes out of this looking strong, seeing how he performs on interviews,
Yeah.
seeing how he performs one-on-one with the press, confrontational media. He's very good on his feet, and I think he'll be able to maneuver this debate and look good, and I think he'll peel off more support from DeSantis. And if you look at the DeSantis Twitterverse, all they're doing is rage tweeting about Vivek, because they know he's neck and neck, if not ahead of them. It shows where they're scared. They don't want to fall to third, because that would be monumental.
He's making Ron DeSantis look wooden, but here's the problem: Ron DeSantis is wooden.
Correct.
He comes across in kind of a flat way, and I think that's what's so. To me, I just find everything funny, because it's like Trump is the antithesis of that.
Right.
Trump can't help himself. He's entertaining even
Right.
when he's not trying to be entertaining.
Right.
And Ron DeSantis does not have that political gift. So I feel like Ron DeSantis has been really served poorly by the billionaires who forced him to run.
And his staff and his consultants, I mean, they really took, like, on paper, a great potential candidate, certainly one for 2028, and they've just decimated his image, his credibility, all this stuff that they were working very meticulously on over the last year to several months. And I think President Trump said it well. He had a great PR team at first, and they were able to, control how he was viewed, the environment in which he was viewed, and present him in a certain light that has now unraveled on the campaign trail, when he hasn't, been able to be in this sort of white box room where everything was catered to.
One of the things that's always interesting with these debates is that there's this kind of desperation. They're always looking for some kind of a kill shot, something to say. And when you're dealing with Trump, which they're all dealing with, it's this idea that if I say this or I say that, and it never seems to work. I mean, we remember when I literally now can't even think of his name. We were talking. This is back in 2016 when they were trying to knock Trump down.
Right.
And it always seemed to backfire. He can seem to get away with it.
Right.
But when they try to do that and to go to that level, it just makes them look bad.
And they've learned nothing. I mean, they're basically repeating the same playbook from 2016 with the Never Trumpers. And now they're doing it against a guy who is theoretically an incumbent. He's had his record. He showed what he was able to do in office, and he's only gained in terms of his political following and his political capital. But they're throwing the same stuff they did in 2015, 2016 at him, and they're scratching their heads wondering why it wouldn't work. You're never going to beat him by, saying, he's rough around the edges, he's mean, he's not really Christian. All these kind of lame attacks that have fallen off him in the past. I mean, you gotta reinvent the playbook. I do think, attacking him from the right has probably been the most successful thing. I don't think it's going to work, but attacking him from the right has been somewhat more effective. But I think Vivek has done it the best way, where it's more complementary. It's I'm going to be Trump, but I'm going to be a little more to his right. I'm going to do things, but just a little better, which is what DeSantis opened with a few months ago. But now he's thrown that out. Now he's taken the whole line about Trump's record was atrocious and there was nothing to be proud of, and that's totally blown up in his face.
It's just, again, I don't think I'm going to watch the debate tonight because who wants to be bored? But I do want to say that Trump is in the room. He's in their heads. And that is, to me, again, I just find it kind of funny that he's able to do that. And then if that's not enough, he brilliantly says, okay, I'm going to do a thing with Tucker Carlson at the same time as the debate. So everyone's going to be watching his conversation with Tucker Carlson, I would think, just because Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump are infinitely more entertaining than any of these guys.
In the past, I remember in the 2016 primary, he skipped one of the debates and he did a fundraiser, I believe, for veterans, and he made it this whole big show, and everyone was talking about him. It was brilliant. He looked great. And again, if he's in a position of strength, he has the leverage, he has the cards, and if he wants to, bulk from this debate and do an interview with, honestly, Tucker Carlson, and it's probably going to be a tough interview. I don't think Tucker's going to give him any softballs here. They've had a confrontational relationship in the past. All the props to him. I think he's showing his dominance in this field, and he doesn't have to, lower himself to get into the mud with these guys. They can duke it out in the mud themselves, and he'll remain pristine.
Well, I want to ask you what you think is going to happen tomorrow, because tomorrow's Thursday. Talk about that, because it's kind of crazy that's true.
Yeah.
That we're talking about this debate tonight, and he's doing this thing with Tucker, and then tomorrow, what?
Well, it looks like he's going to be turning himself in to the faulty, prison system, whatever you want to call it, which, again, I think is also a brilliant move. I was speaking to some of the other indicted individuals last night who said they're going to be turning themselves in on Friday. So he had some flexibility. I think he chose the day after the debates on purpose. Definitely going to draw attention to this, and attention needs to be drawn to it. It's a disgusting spectacle, what's happening to our country and the justice system. What I think is going to happen, I think all of these indictments, I think the best legal theory is one that the organization I work for, the National Constitutional Law Union, put out, which basically said if he was not impeached for any of these crimes, he's immune. Because if he committed a crime while in office, he needs to be first impeached for it, and then it could be tried at these various courts. But because that hasn't happened, you need a writ of prohibition, you need a certiorari before judgment or something, get this to SCOTUS and toss it out. And I think ultimately a lot of these are going to end up at SCOTUS one way or another, at least I hope. And they're all meritless. They're tenuous legal theories. The New York case is laughable. The Jack Smith case is laughable. This latest case is laughable. A RICO charge. What is the underlying criminal organization here in this RICO charge? Him and his lawyers, him talking to his lawyers, consulting with his lawyers to, advance his legal remedies to challenge different results, which is something that's happened throughout American history. There were a competing slate of electors in the 1960 election. Hawaii had competing slate of electors. All of these things are very much defined in law, and he was using his legal options available to him as president during his time in office to examine them. So he committed no crime, and I think they're just simply trying to criminalize dissent, and it's a sad state of affairs.
All right, we're going to be right back. Folks, don't forget, you are obliged to go to metaxastalk.com to give to Food for the Poor. We desperately need your help. Please go to metaxastalk.com, click on the banner, do what you can. God bless you as you give. Welcome back, folks. I'm talking to Gavin Wax. He's the president of the New York Young Republican Club. I just love the idea that we're here in New York and we've got Republicans and conservatives and young Republicans. How long have you been with the New York Young Republicans Club?
I was a member a few years back. I became president in 2019, and this is a storied institution. It's the oldest young Republican club in the country. It goes back to 1856. A lot of famous alumni have come through the ranks. A lot of old Rockefeller New York types, people that probably would have toasted at a venue like this.
Yeah.
And we took it over. We made it a populist, more Trumpian club back in 2019, and we've been loving it. And we're the largest in the country. We have a clubhouse here in the city, and it's been a pleasure and it's been an honor to work in this organization deep behind enemy lines. We're not a electoral juggernaut by any means, but the media's here, the financial world's here. There's a lot of things moving and taking place in New York, and frankly, the Trump movement is a New York movement. I mean, he's a man from Queens. I'm from Queens. You're from Queens. We're all from Queens here, and he emerged from the outer boroughs. And honestly, the kind of Trumpian style politics is quintessentially New York. The populism, sticking it to the man, to the establishment. I mean, that's all New York. That wasn't from the South. That wasn't from the Midwest. That was from New York.
And it certainly wasn't from Washington, D.C., ladies and gentlemen, or from Indiana. Now, let me just say that tonight's debate, we mentioned, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Larry Elder, Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Mike Pence, and Chris Christie, and a couple of other also rans.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, Tim Scott is one person that I would say is, in some ways, if I had to pick of that group, I would pick Tim Scott. Not that I would ever pick anybody at this point other than Donald Trump, because I think he'll be the nominee, but it's just interesting. Tim Scott's style is dramatically different from Trump.
Right.
But he has a lot of respect.
There's certainly a cordial relationship, and I think, again, it just goes to show that there were plenty of ways you could have ran in this primary without being antagonistic towards Trump, or even what DeSantis recently did towards Trump supporters, the listless vessels. I mean, that's really where he crossed the line. But someone like Scott, I think he's a, what's this phrase, a stalking horse, especially in Iowa. He's creeping up in Iowa vis-a-vis DeSantis. He has a lot of support from the donor class, from the establishment. He's not exactly hated by MAGA. So I think he's been towing a much more cated line in this primary.
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked if he came in second in Iowa.
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked if he came in second in South Carolina. And I wouldn't be shocked if the first three states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, where DeSantis polls ends up falling to third or fourth place. I don't know what he has a regional strength in New Hampshire to come in second. Scott, I think, has regional strengths in Iowa and South Carolina.
Nikki Haley strikes me as the definition of deep state. Mm-hmm. I met her the morning of the Trump inaugural in 2016. And, that's back before we all knew who everyone really was and kind of trusted people. But her comments following January 6th, she's one of those who buys into the January 6th narrative, this fake narrative that Trump's an insurrectionist. Of course, Mike Pence, to his disgrace, very vocally and boldly bought into that narrative recently. But why does Nikki Haley even think that she would have the ghost of a chance?
I think a lot of these guys are living in an echo chamber. They're surrounded by, sycophants who are singing their praises, particularly consultants who want their money and are telling them, no, Trump's done, Trump was over. These are the same people that said Trump was done back in December where the polling was a little closer. And they legitimately believe, their own hype. And I don't think they get out much. I don't think they talk to a lot of voters. And even if they did have a path, that path is nowhere to be found because you have too many of these same similar candidates competing for the same, small number of voters. Pence, Haley, they're all competing for the same never Trump voters. There's only so many of them. If you're trying to slice up a 10%, part of the pie, you're really getting crumbs. And that's what we're seeing. They're getting crumbs in this primary.
I guess I also think that most of them are politically tone deaf. That's what I find so interesting. When you have a political genius like Trump, even if you hate Trump, he's a political genius. And most of them are really very, very politically tone deaf.
Agreed. They're running races from 20, 30 years ago, and they don't have their pulse on the country. I mean, Trump came out in 2015, 2016. He talked about trade. He talked about immigration. He talked about, the state of D.C. He presented this very anti-elitist rhetoric, anti-globalist rhetoric, and he was able to break the blue wall. And he won by flipping 8 million Obama voters. He broke into states that Republicans hadn't won since Reagan. He created a new coalition that went outside of, the country club Republican hotbeds, and he said, listen, there's a big base out there of people that are looking for a party to speak to them, and the Republican Party of Nikki Haley and Mike Pence weren't. And because of that, we actually could have, wins under our belt as a party because the McCain-Romney strategy failed. It failed 2 election cycles.
That's for sure. Holy cow. What do you think might happen on the Democrat side? I can't believe that Biden will even finish his term, much less run in 2024.
I think it's going to be weekend at Bernie's. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they don't have a deep bench. I think Biden is the best they have. And why is he the best they have? Because a lot of people, still think of Biden as this moderate, Delaware Democrat, Irish Catholic. He wasn't too crazy. But, I mean, he's a ghost of who he was. And he's being run by his handlers and the deep state apparatus. He's a vessel. But he gives this impression of being, like that grandpa or that uncle you see at, the barbecues on the weekends in the Midwest, but he's not.
If you're very, very, very tuned out.
Correct, and many people are.
Which most of the electorate is, which is how somebody like that even could be running. We'll be right back talking to Gavin Wax. It's the Eric Metaxas Show. Don't go away. Welcome back. It's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm Eric Metaxas. This is the show. I want to remind you, we need your help with Food for the Poor. We're really behind in our campaign, and I just want to remind you there's 3 ways you can give. You go to metaxastalk.com, and you'll click on the banner. You'll see it right there, Emergency Relief, metaxastalk.com. You can text Eric to 91999. My first name just happens to be Eric, 91999. Text Eric to 91999, or dial 844-863-HOPE. 844-863-HOPE. We're very grateful to you, and we do need your help. 844-863-HOPE, or text Eric to 91999, or go to metaxastalk.com. Talking to Gavin Wax, who's the president of the New York Young Republican Club. People can follow on Twitter at NYYRC.
Yes.
NYYRC, or they can follow you, Gavin Wax, at Gavin Wax, Gavin Wax. Okay, so on the Democratic side, it's really astounding to see the way RFK Jr. is shaking things up. I mean, it's kind of amazing to see I didn't think I would ever see a common sense Democrat again in my lifetime. I thought that was done. But we know that there's no way that he's going to get to debate the husk formerly known as Joe Biden.
Right. He's in a tough spot, but I appreciate what he's doing. He's shaking things. I mean, I don't agree with him on everything, but he's running like a Democrat would have run. We disagree on some issues, but he's sensible on others. You could talk to him, and I think it's refreshing. And I think, the Democrat Party is a monolith. I mean, say what you want personally, and, someone like RFK, especially with his name, certainly is a threat to that.
Presidential ballot, not in the Democratic Party?
Not on the Democratic side, and, we're also seeing this no labels movement. All of this, I think, is going to peel away support from Biden. And there have been polls that have been done that show when you have these third-party candidates pulling, a few percentage points, it all helps Trump. So if the Republican Party was smart, they'd be encouraging ballot access for these third-party races everywhere, which is what the Dems do to us.
What's your sense of whether we could have a fair election, because I think a lot of people are persuaded, as I am, that the election was flat out stolen.
Yeah.
We've always had a lot of corruption, but we've never really believed that an election was stolen on the magnitude that we saw in 2020. And of course, that makes a lot of people cynical.
Right.
What is being done, and by whom, to make sure that we could have something closer to a real election?
Well, look, I think it's a good question. It's a tough question. I mean, there's a few things to keep in mind, like you just mentioned. There's always been a margin of fraud in all our races in American history. You know, we're in a beautiful Gilded Age, clubhouse here in New York right now. You go back to Tammany Hall. They were running up the numbers in New York in the 1800s, the 1900s. This was all common knowledge. We saw some of this stuff in 1960. We've seen this stuff at local races, local elections over the years. It's part of the American political history. What we saw in 2020, however, was, a series of things that made that type of fraud scalable. Where we're dealing with the Summer of Love, basically a color revolution. You're dealing with a global biblical plague, at least we thought at the time a biblical plague, where all the election rules across the country, mail-ins, proxy voting, early voting, all of these things were expanded to levels we've never seen before, and they were able to operate under that framework. Now, do I think there's going to be some fraud going into 24? Absolutely, there's going to be some fraud, but they're never going to get away with it to the same scale they did previously, not without those things covering their tracks and without the knowledge that we now have about these types of tactics. So I think simply having the knowledge is going to help us, and I think part of the battle is convincing people it's already over. This nihilistic view that the elections are stolen, don't go vote. That makes their life easier because it's a margin game, it's a number game. If we pull out the votes, they just have to do more cheating. So if we keep our numbers strong, and I do believe, based on the polling, where Trump is basically neck and neck with Biden, something that didn't exist in 2020. In some cases in the RCP average, Trump has been up over Biden in the national popular vote, which he doesn't need to win. With a situation like that, where you're polling that well, that strongly, it's going to make this type of fraud very difficult. And remember, we were talking about 45,000 votes across, 4 or 5 states. That's not a huge insurmountable number. That's a very targeted small number that we would flip, and the whole election changes course entirely. But I think, there's been good efforts on the ground. I encourage Republicans, get involved in taking advantage of some of these things where they're legal. It's the rules of the game. Take advantage, whether it's proxy voting, early voting, mail-in voting. You got to get your low propensity voters out. The Dems, they'll get the low enthusiasm, low propensity couch potatoes out to vote. We got to do the same thing on our side. We have those people on our side. It's just a numbers game.
Well, Dick Morris has talked about that, and he was here, I guess, about a week ago, saying that he actually believes that Trump will win, but he believes Trump will go to jail because there will be a gag order on him as he's convicted in some of these states. That they'll appeal. There's a gag order that he will obviously not go along with the gag order, and that he would be jailed, and that he would campaign in part from jail. When as a political genius and a legend, I don't take that lightly. I don't think he would say that just because Do you? I mean, you don't seem to think that
convicted on some of these things and then slowly knock him off on different states or even at the county level, which I think they may have some success with. I don't know if it's going to be enough to do it for him. And look, I think if he is convicted, I think it's going to be something more akin to, he can't leave Mar-a-Lago or he can't leave one of his properties. I don't think we're going to see him go to jail. But listen, if they actually have the gall, have the chutzpah to throw him in a cell, I think they're going to make him a martyr, and I think he's going to win in a landslide. And honestly, it's going to challenge the very core of our system. But
that's what I see, is that they seem increasingly unable not to do the crazy thing that will redound to Trump's benefit. They seem unable because of their desperation. Yeah. So I cannot put it past them. In the past, I would have said not in a million years. We'll be right back talking to Gavin Wax. Don't go away. Folks, welcome back. I'm talking to a fellow New Yorker, Gavin Wax, who's the president of the New York Young Republicans Club. You're an ambassador for Turning Point USA, for Live Action. You're a Newsmax insider. When did you become conservative? Were you always conservative? How did that happen for you?
No, not necessarily. I think my family were mostly JFK Dems, so kind of, middle of the road Democrats. And I just became more political growing up. I had a stage where I guess I call myself a democratic socialist for a little bit. Then I kind of was more of a libertarian. And then, I slowly, grew up and, read more, had more life experience, and I started to become more conservative. I definitely think, Trump was a huge part of my political, realignment. And I think it was for many people. He was different. He was unique. He came onto the stage and just, ruffled everyone's feathers and just made a big splash. But it's been a progression. I think, I always find it when people say, oh, I was a lifelong Republican, or I've always thought these things, I always feel like, those are not the kind of guys that are going to be able to articulate the best. You got to go through it. You got to go through changes.
Right.
You got to go through different, life experiences to get where you are.
Well, it's interesting how Trump has done that for so many people. Our friend Brandon Strzok has, created this walk away campaign. How many people woke up and anymore?
Right.
And I think that's happening. And of course, the mainstream media does not want the world to know that this is happening. But it's happening like crazy. I remember when it happened with Reagan. I mean, the Rust Belt Democrat voters who said, we vote for that guy. Correct. He's our guy. And so many people are doing that with Trump.
They did it for Nixon, too, don't forget.
And to some extent for Nixon, yeah. I don't remember that as vividly, but I do remember it a little bit. But it is interesting that Trump was kind of an earthquake. I remember, speaking of debates, in the debate when he flat out, with Jeb Bush right there, said that George W. had made a mistake in getting us into the Iraq War. And I thought, whoa, no one has said that. That is really gutsy, really bold. And suddenly, tons of Americans who'd been kind of harboring those thoughts said yes.
Yep.
Talk about a realignment.
He called it a big fat mistake to a whole room of Jeb Bush donors and surrogates, and people were shocked because it wasn't conventional, but he knew he was able to take a pulse of the country, and he knew that this was a popular belief. It wasn't a belief being espoused by the mainstream Republican candidates, but that he knew that there was a market for it, he knew that there was a base for it, and someone just needed to say it, and he was able to pull the trigger and basically just go in there and speak truth to power, and he built it, people came, and I think we're seeing the same thing again today, where you're seeing people playing it safe, regurgitating the same lines that they've been told is acceptable for Republicans. And if they veer away from some of these controversial issues, back in the day, or back in 2016, it was the Iraq War, it was trade, it was immigration. You touch on these things. Now it's Ukraine. If you're able to, say we shouldn't spend all our money in Ukraine, we shouldn't send Americans to die in Ukraine, you'll find an audience and you'll surge in the polls. But people don't have the courage.
Well, thank you, Gavin Wax. Got to have you back. Glad to have you in New York. I want to remind people tonight, live post-debate coverage, 11 p.m. Eastern on the Salem News Channel. You can go to salemnewschannel.com. Again, it will be live post-debate coverage, 11 p.m. Eastern on the Salem News Channel, which you can find at salemnewschannel.com. I also want to remind you folks, we really have an urgent need for you to step up. Food for the Poor needs your help. I'm asking you, please go to metaxastalk.com. You should be going there anyway. There's all kinds of fascinating stuff at metaxastalk.com, but you'll see the banner for Food for the Poor. We need your help. People are suffering, and it's the least we can do. Give whatever you can, doesn't matter, but you'll be blessing people. And so please do that, metaxastalk.com, or text Eric to 91999. Again, text Eric to 91999. Thank you. Folks, this is your daily reminder to please go to mypillow.com or mystore.com, and to get huge savings, use the code Eric. If you don't believe me, here's some celebrity friends.
Mama said to use the code Eric.
Use the code Eric.